Three metals that rise in the first 2 months of the year. Now I've got three metals I want to talk to you about today, and I'll give them away right now, but one of them is my favorite, and I'm going to show you that one last. They are silver, copper, and platinum. Let's get started. Metal number one, silver. First, we'll look at the chart, and then we will look at the seasonality for silver. So let's take a look. Well, when we look at silver, this is about a 5-year chart, and you can see that going way back to 2020, there is a pretty strong resistance level that silver could not crack, and that was around $30 or so an ounce. Well, what happened was it broke out. Now, what's happening lately is it's pulling back to that breakout point. When you see a strong cluster, even down to here, where a commodity or a stock clusters or consolidates for a while, that tends to tell us that investors are not willing to sell it off much further. And there's a little saying in technical analysis, the greater the base, the better the case. Now, this is a fairly small base so far on silver. You can see it's only been basing since the beginning of the year in 2024. Still, that is a consolidation. And if this consolidation breaks out, that could be extremely popular with traders and investors. One other thing to keep in mind with all three of these metals is that right now, you guys have probably seen some of my videos talking about how the stock market, particularly North American markets, are quite overvalued and quite technically ready for some sort of a pullback in 2025. Well, guess what? Commodities, metals, materials, these are not stocks. These are base materials, and often when you see stock markets overvalued and ready to fall, it's the commodities that pick up the slack. So this could be an alternative investment in 2025 if you believe, as I do, that stock markets are overvalued. So let's take a look at the seasonality for silver in this case. Here's the chart. Now, this chart is a seasonal chart courtesy of Sentiment Trader. Sentiment Trader has noted the trading days of the year. Now, you guys may know that the market is not open 365 days of the year. The calendar year has 365 days, but there's really only about 250 days of actual trading days. Think of it. We have weekends and holidays. So taking out those, you are left with about 250 days in a given year. Well, that means about 20 to 21 days per month. And so when we see that the first 30 or so days, and I'll zoom in on this just so you can see it a little bit better, for silver are very bullish, you can see that silver in those first 30 days tends to outperform on a relative basis versus much of the rest of the year where it tends to move sideways. So the best time to own silver is basically between January 1st and around the end of February, first few days of March from a seasonal basis. Again, going back to our chart, like we just looked at, there's a reason to think that that consolidation will hold, and perhaps January and February will turn out to be pretty good months for silver. Metal number two is copper. Here's the chart. Take a look at this chart. There's a few interesting things that we should look at when we're watching this metal. First of all, it has been in a gentle uptrend since 2022. But the other thing I want you to notice is that it's in a consolidation pattern. So you do have falling peaks, but you also have rising troughs, and that's called a triangle formation. When markets move into a tightening formation like a triangle, so think of it that volatility was very high on copper from the beginning of 2024. Now that volatility is shrinking. The moves are getting smaller. Sooner or later, the market will break out on copper. Why? Because typically markets don't like to stay consolidating or making little movements. Market doesn't like standing still. Eventually something happens. So when you have a pattern where the lows are no longer getting lower, it often means there will be a breakout to the upside. Well, let's see if the seasonals agree with that. Now you can see again, we have the first 40 days marked off, and that tends to be a very strong period for copper. you can see that it tends to start outperforming really more into February, and that outperformance can carry right out until the 100th day, which I think is going to lead you into the early spring at some point. The third metal to talk about is platinum. Now, this is my favorite chart of the day, and I'll show you why in a minute. I wrote this book about 10 years ago, and it was a bestseller in its time. And in fact, it was so popular that I actually revised it 2 years ago. And I named the book Sideways because I love sideways patterns. They're so easy to trade, and platinum is doing that right now. Here we have a 5-year chart of platinum going back to about 2020, and you can see that there has been a super strong support level right around 80 bucks on platinum. Well, that's incredible. In fact, look at all the attempts that the market has made to crack $80, and then right after those attempts, market moves up. Support is strong, just like in Star Wars. The Force is strong with this one. Well, support is very strong at around $80 on platinum. Buyers like to buy platinum at 80 and bid it up. Well, here we are. It's 82 and change, almost 83 right now as we speak. It could pull back another buck or two, sure. But history has shown us that platinum loves to bounce off of $80. And I think there's a pretty good chance of that happening. Here's why. Look at the seasonality chart for platinum in the first 40 days of the year. You want to talk about a strong move? That's the single best time of the year to own platinum. The market moves up faster between January 1st and around the end of February, which is be around the 40th trading day of the year, better than any other time of the year. In fact, much of the year for platinum is pretty negative. So this is a good time to be looking at platinum. And I think between the way the chart is looking, and as I explained earlier, the risk that's on equity markets at this point, some of these metals, including platinum, will be worth taking a look at and considering for any diversified portfolio. Do keep in mind that copper and silver tend to be much more actively traded metals by market participants, whereas platinum's really more of a second-tier metal, I guess you could say, in terms of volume, and therefore the volatility is, as you saw in the chart a minute ago, quite a bit more extreme. Platinum should be traded more by aggressive traders because platinum does tend to have a reputation for being a lot more volatile than some of the other metals. Well, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in our next video. And I do continue to suggest that you subscribe to my blog at valuetrend.ca, where I post all kinds of charts, give you all kinds of ideas on stocks, bonds, commodities, and the likes. Thanks for watching.